During the COVID-19 pandemic, many COVID-related medical procedures or needs were covered by your insurance, as many insurance agencies in the industry voluntarily waived COVID copays and cost-sharing obligations. There are some changes coming along with that, and to talk about that, we'll be joined by an expert on that matter, J.J. Conway, the principal attorney and the founder of J.J. Conway Law, joining us now on the MegaCast. J.J., thank you for being with us today.
Sure. Nice to see you.
Appreciate it. Can you tell us a little bit about your law firm and what it does for employees all over the state of Michigan?
All right. So we are a boutique law firm. We're located in Royal Oak, and we represent employees and other interested parties in employee benefit disputes. So essentially, you can think of anything that happens in your employee benefit plan, healthcare, insurances, or retirement issues. We handle those cases for employees when they run into problems.
We're joined by J.J. Conway. He is the founder and the principal attorney at J.J. Conway Law, joining us today on the MegaCast. And so, as I had mentioned, many in the insurance agency had voluntarily waived copays and cost-sharing obligations related to COVID-19. During the pandemic. Recently, it was announced that private insurers are eliminating these waivers regardless of vaccination status. Can you talk a little bit about what that means for employees in the state of Michigan regarding their insurance benefits and what your law firm is doing, or what some people can be doing with the help of a law firm like yours in order to combat this issue?
Well, it's more of a policy change. Obviously, when the pandemic first began, no one really knew how to treat this condition. And so the insurance industry as a whole decided that it wouldn't be really fair to put the cost-sharing obligations on the backs of their insureds. So they waived voluntarily costs that were associated with COVID-19 treatments and diagnostic testing, things of that nature. Once a vaccine became available and readily available and free to people within the state of Michigan, the insurance industry changed their position in this. And they essentially said, okay, now there is a preventative measure. And if you don't avail yourself of that, then there is going to be an increased cost-sharing obligation that you'll experience. So that's essentially what's the big change.
We're joined by J.J. Conway. He is the founder and the principal attorney at J.J. Conway Law, joining us today on the MegaCast. And so, J.J., Delta Airlines recently began charging an additional $200 a month to employees who didn't qualify for an exemption, and yet chose not to be vaccinated against COVID-19. On this front, how has that impacted the workforce at Delta? And is there any and other companies that may have similar policies? And is there any sort of a legal issue with what they're doing, or any sort of legal gray area there that may affect other companies that are smaller, may not have as much of a significant backing from their own attorneys in order to enact these different policies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think, look at all employers, private employers in particular, are trying to figure out a safe and appropriate way to navigate this situation. On the one hand, they've got to keep their workforce safe. And on the other hand, they sort of have to respect the divergence of interests within this particular area, whether you should be vaccinated or not. So Delta took a totally different course. They did not do a heavy-handed approach. What they said is, okay, if you are vaccinated, it's business as usual. They'll have your same benefits. They'll continue uninterrupted. If you choose not to be vaccinated, there's going to be a financial cost to that. And so assessing their employees on average $200 a month extra, in addition to whatever their deductibles and other cost-sharing obligations are. That was the decision they made. So it left it up to the employees to make a financial decision whether to do this or not. Interestingly, the Delta model, at least the early indication, seems to be working very effectively. They've gotten better compliance than most of their peers within the industry.
We're joined by J.J. Conway, the principal attorney and the founder of J.J. Conway Law, joining us today on the MegaCast. And as we go forward and this pandemic continues onward, and there seems to be, as time goes on, no clear indication of where we begin to pull out of this pandemic and return to some sort of normalcy. And that creates a greater sense of urgency to protect your employees and to, in some cases, if people are not complying with precautionary techniques, to put other measures in place that either counteract that or put some sort of disincentive in place to either encourage them to do so or to simply say, if you don't want to follow along with these particular precautions, that's fine, but there are going to be some consequences. From a legal standpoint, what should companies that may be considering putting measures like Delta Airlines put in or like other companies have been putting in to counteract those that are not taking precautions, what precautions should those companies be taking in planning to enact these policies to make sure that they are on solid legal ground, but also are able to fulfill their obligation and their desire to create a safe work environment and a safe environment for the customers as well, should that be the case?
So one way to look at this is the first global pandemic of this nature in 100 years. And so there isn't a really firmly established rule book on what's right and what's wrong. And certainly the whole area of benefits law, it came on the scene long after the last pandemic. So what you're trying to do is, as you point out, balance the various interests of all of the interested parties, be it your customer base, your employees, and essentially your coworkers when you bring employees back on site. What I think employers are trying to do is figure out a way to navigate this in such that they respect the divergence of views of people, but also make sure that their co-working spaces are safe and appropriate. And one of the ways that legally they seem to be able to do this is by adding financial incentives, either paying people to become vaccinated or putting a financial cost on the decision to not be vaccinated. And it seems to be, at least with the federal agencies that have weighed in on this issue, that seems to have the legal blessing of the federal government.
We're joined by J.J. Conway, principal attorney at J.J. Conway Law, and also the founder of J.J. Conway Law as well. And so you mentioned benefits. What's the future, in your opinion, of what you believe employers will be providing their workers in terms of benefits, particularly such as fertility benefits? It seems like that's an increasingly important issue to a larger number of employees who are seeking to either continue work with their current company or are seeking other jobs.
Well, when you looked at benefit plans from 30, 40 years ago, they used to have letters from the chief executive officer telling employees that their benefit plans were, quote, their hidden paycheck. And it turns out that benefits account for around a third of people's compensation. It's a very effective way to deliver compensation to employees that tends to be tax-free in many, many instances. So what is very unique about this particular period in time is that there is a tight labor market. There's an emphasis on providing competitive benefits for employers to attract employees. Now, you mentioned the fertility treatment benefits. That's a very costly and expensive elective medical procedure. Most plans have not covered that. They've written it out as an exclusion. But as people begin to assess their options in a tight labor market, and you have two employers that are offering two totally different benefit plans, one that provides the benefit and one that doesn't, employers are finding that the benefit packages are the way to become increasingly competitive in hiring.
We're joined by J.J. Conway, principal attorney and the founder of J.J. Conway Law, joining us today on the MegaCast. And what about benefits and coverage, particularly health insurance-wise, for employees' children? How about teens with they're suffering from something like an eating disorder? Is this something that is currently covered by most or on average by insurance providers, or is it not something that is covered, something like an eating disorder or other similar mental health and also physical health related issues?
As you just alluded to a moment ago, with the emphasis on where benefit plans are in terms of, let's say, what their values are, there seems to be an increased focus on not only the creation of families, but the appropriate care for families. And this issue is an issue that is not something necessarily that employers are having to offer. They already are mandated to offer it, and they should be offering it. The issue is that insurance companies have been giving parents a very difficult time in providing for the mental health of their children. And the children are every bit entitled to these benefits as their adult parents. So parents have increasingly encountered problems. And so this is an area within benefits law where the courts are now starting to get involved. They're looking at the existing policies, they're looking at the existing plans, and they're holding the insurers and the employers to account to make sure that children are getting the necessary mental health treatment that they need, as you alluded to, for a very serious condition like an eating disorder.
We're joined by J.J. Conway. He is the principal attorney and the founder of J.J. Conway Law, joining us today on the MegaCast. J.J., just another few minutes with you today before we'll say goodbye. At this moment in time, are there any other significant changes or significant considerations that are being put to thought by insurance providers or by employers as they're considering re-upping with their insurance provider or switching providers that employees, potential employees, or the general public should be aware of at this time, or anything else that we haven't discussed today that you think would be of importance or interest?
You know, Tyler, people always dread open enrollment periods. That's always, it seems very bureaucratic. It seems like it's going to be, time consuming, but it's worth maybe taking a Sunday afternoon, sitting there and going through the different benefit options for the coming year. If you're an employee, trying to look at what your healthcare needs are, what the needs of your family are, and then look at what the companies are offering and make the decisions accordingly. It's probably 2 or 3 hours, but it's time very well spent.
Well, JJ, we appreciate your insight and clarification on a lot of these issues and these moving parts that are changing in the insurance agency and certainly among employers and by trade affecting our employees all throughout the state of Michigan and around the country as well. So thank you for your help.
Thank you.